Hey, how's it going out there, my friends? Josh here with Desert Gardens Homestead. So every year I look forward to this Washington Navel Orange to produce a very, very heavy fruit set. It produces almost more oranges than what I can handle in any one given season. Coming back here, there are so many oranges on this tree. And despite the innumerable oranges on this tree, it is actually blossoming and wants to produce even more fruit. This Washington Navel is a fruit tree that I can count on year after year to give me a very heavy fruit set. So this tree is one of my favorites as far as a citrus. However, I do have quite a few fruit trees in the yard that are considered biannual or alternate bearing fruit trees. These are trees that need a little bit of maintenance if you want to have a regular fruit set each and every year. And I want to show you some examples of these trees. And here is one such example. This is a Nagami kumquat, and I put a video out on this last winter, and I just showed the overwhelming amount of fruit set on this particular tree. This tree is about 7 feet tall, and it was just completely loaded in fruit. And as you can see here, there is sparsely anything on this tree regarding fruit. Just maybe a good handful, maybe a dozen fruit or so on the entire tree, when last year there was just more fruit than I could even count. And yet another example. This is a W. Murcott mandarin, and this tree is pushing heights of about 8 feet. And this particular tree had a ton of fruit last year. I did a video, and this year there is no fruit whatsoever. I don't even recall any flowers on the tree at all, and so it just produced nothing. So it was just one thing that one year it produced heavy and this year it didn't. So this is the W. Murcott mandarin. Here are some Chinese red goji berry. A little different than the standard goji berry. This is the Chinese version, and these are a little bit larger, not as sweet. Last year I had a very heavy fruit set on this bush, and this year I did have some flowers, but virtually no fruit whatsoever. This is a smaller citrus. This is the Miwa kumquat, a very sweet variety. Last year I had a fairly decent fruit set for the size of the tree, and actually this year it's not terrible. There's probably about a dozen, but it is certainly less than what I had last year. So I have a strong suspicion, even though this tree is only about 4 feet tall, that this will also be alternate bearing. Many of these stone fruit I also grow. For example, the plums and some of these hybrids, the plueri, are very alternate bearing as well. They will be very heavy fruiting in one year, and then the subsequent year virtually nothing, maybe just a handful, give or take. And these are all very well established mature trees, and they've been in the ground now for almost 10 years, and they do this almost every year. So what can we do to mitigate the alternate bearing or biannual bearing in fruit trees? Is there anything we can do to hinder or lessen the alternate bearing? There are some things you can do if you want to put in a little bit of time and effort. As soon as you see the flower buds coming on, you could thin about a third to maybe even a half of the flowering buds on any particular tree, and that would hinder the biannual bearing of a fruit tree. And also just making sure that that fruit tree has all the water resources and fertilization necessary in order to have a very strong and productive year. But in the case of a fruit tree where the fruit are smaller and there are just countless flower buds, it's very intimidating to go out and to spend a lot of time just removing the flower buds. In my case, I just don't have the time to do that, and so I just have to essentially take it as it is and deal with the situation and really try to find varieties where that doesn't seem to be a factor, such as with mulberries and certain citrus types, the Washington navel, other types of orange trees. I've got a Moro blood orange here in the yard that doesn't seem to be affected. There are quite a few fruit trees out there that are alternate bearing resistant, and it's worth it to try to find those if that's a factor for you. Here's a dwarf black mulberry I have in the yard, and it is just such a heavy fruiter every single year, just abundance of little fruit. And I can count on my mulberries each and every year, first thing in the spring, the first thing to fruit for me. And these are just magnificent to have in the yard to get our fill, and also have plenty left over for the birds and the wildlife. Figs also are a reliable fruiting tree. I've had zero issue with any alternate bearing with the figs. They always seem to produce quite a bit each and every year, and the larger they get, the more they produce. So if you see a fruit tree in your landscape and the previous year it fruited excessively, and this year you are seeing little to nothing with that fruit tree, don't despair. It is probably natural. I would maybe just look into it and see if that tree has a reputation of being a biannual or alternate bearing fruit tree. There are quite a few that do it. I know apples are pretty strong culprits of it, as well as the stone fruit. As I mentioned, the plums, pears, peaches, things of that nature. And so it's worthwhile to either look into it and try to find various varieties that are resistant to it, or in my case, just plant enough trees to where if a tree is not producing one year, it really doesn't make a difference, because another tree in the landscape will pick up the slack and make up for any deficiency with any tree that is not producing that particular year. And you can always supplement other fruiting varieties, such as this grapevine here. This is a seedless Thompson, and grapes are just notorious for being very heavy producers each and every year, and they will always produce without having any issue being an alternate bearing. So if you have a number of these other crops within your landscape, as I said, they can certainly make up for any deficiencies. Here's the Moro blood orange that any other tree or cultivar may prohibit. I feel like this issue would be a big issue or a hindrance for somebody that had limited space. If you are in a subdivision or just a small piece of land and you really have to be choosy or wise with what you put into the landscape, really making sure that everything is fruiting abundantly each and every year would be a pretty big priority. So if that's the case for you, before planting a fruit tree, I would just do a little bit of research and see if that particular tree has any issues, including being biannual or alternate bearing. And if you already have a tree such as that within your landscape, then going through those practices that I've outlined with thinning the flowering buds is really the best means right off the bat. If they're already starting to fruit, it's not as effective. It won't be, it's already put quite a bit of energy into making those smaller fruits. So really, to nip it in the bud, you want to get it while the flower is open, and then that would prohibit the fruit in that particular case. So if that applies to you, that's what I would recommend. And just making sure that you do some research up front and find what it is that you're looking at and how it would work within your landscape. And I do hope that this video was educational, and most importantly, that it was entertaining for you. I certainly appreciate you checking out this video. Certainly appreciate you checking out this channel, and hope you all have a great day today. God bless you all. Take care.